Greetings everyone. Today is December 1st and I just finished my Thanksgiving work weekend and I'm ready to make a video. I haven't done it in a while, and if you'll bear with me, I'm going to talk about some law stuff today, some legal shenanigans that I'm just going to go over. It's not going to be like my What About This videos where I give you different scenarios, but I'm going to try to prove that it is legal to kill a police officer in certain situations where they're violating your civil rights. By the way, my Christmas lights have pretty much all burnt out just in time for Christmas, so just the top ones are going. It's kind of funny. Also, in relation to legal stuff, I've been wanting to make this new series of YouTube videos about YouTube videos that I watch. You know, I used to make those videos. Like my second video I made on YouTube was about this Tyra Banks show about different weird fears people have. And I had like a clip from Wife Swap on there, and I've had like a lot of other videos where I comment on other YouTube videos and TV shows and stuff. And I know there's like a fair use copyright law. I don't know if you have to like put a disclaimer in your description or what the deal is, but I'm probably just gonna say fuck it and do it anyway and just ignore the laws and stuff. And if they take my account down, they take it down. But I want to make a bunch of videos talking about different series of videos that I watch on YouTube, and a lot of those relate to police activities and stuff. Like cop watchers, cop blockers, photography is not a crime, people film the police, open carry gun rights activists, that kind of thing. Then I'm going to get like how it branches off into these other different weirder videos that I found. It's pretty interesting stuff. But I've been watching this TV show lately called Prospectors that have people mining for gems in Colorado. And I wondered how that related to the stand your ground laws and the what is it, the Fourth Amendment? You just check this out here. It says that you have the right to be secure in your person's, houses, papers, and effects. Effects is like your property, I think. So I'm not sure how this would work, but let's say you have a claim, a mineral rights claim, in somewhere like Colorado. Colorado doesn't really have the same stand your ground laws as we do in Kentucky and other states. It's a little bit weird. I think you're supposed to like retreat or something if somebody attacks you, but this is more about like if somebody's stealing your shit, what are you allowed to legally do? I don't think you're allowed to just shoot somebody if they're trying to rob you. But if they're in your house, I think maybe you are because your physical person is at stake or something. But if you have this mineral rights claim, it's weird because you have the rights to the minerals in the ground, but you don't have the right of the surface properties. So like somebody can walk on your claim, you can't do anything, but once they start digging, then they're committing the illegal act. But the problem is up in the mountains, it's so far away, the police can't get there in time, so what's a person to do? I've been wondering, is it legal for them to shoot somebody if they're on their claim or not, especially if they see them digging in it, you know, or at least shoot them in the leg and let them bleed out or starve up on the mountain, because that's not really them killing them, but like some of those gems and things that they mine for are worth thousands of dollars. I mean, what is a person to do if you're walking up to your like mining claim, you see somebody stealing your shit like half a mile up? You're obviously not going to be able to get there and outrun them because you're going uphill and they're going downhill. So what can you do? It seems like it should be allowed. I don't know. But this leads me into a lot of these other situations with the cops and the police. And this is really pertinent, poignant, whatever word you want to use, since the Ferguson Michael Brown case ruling and the riots and everything's going on. A lot of people out there are probably wanting to kill some police, and I think I may have a legal way to do it. Because, like I said, I watch all these videos, and I've got all these legal precedents I've been researching here to talk about in this video. And let's see. So the deal is, the first 5 amendments of the Constitution are the important ones. You've got free speech, which is number 1, and also, well, see, a lot of people say the Fifth Amendment, which is the... Which one is the fifth? I had all these links. I've heard people quote the Fifth Amendment when they say they want to remain silent. That's because the Miranda laws came out of the Fifth Amendment. Basically, it's the one about self-incrimination. You have the right to remain silent so you don't incriminate yourself. And because of that, Miranda versus Arizona says that once, oh, this is really interesting. Not only do you have the right to remain silent, but once you tell a police officer you want to remain silent, they're supposed to stop interrogating you. And people, I've seen a lot of videos where people say, they just want to remain silent, or they plead the fifth, or whatever, and the cop keeps asking them questions, which should be illegal. And also, if you ask for a lawyer, they can't ask you anything else until your lawyer shows up. So that's Miranda versus Arizona. That was like I think it was a class action. Anyway, it's really interesting because I was reading this thing about how they question people. Police manuals give police different ways to interrogate people. Okay, listen to this shit. Okay, they tell the officers that the principal psychological factor contributing to a successful interrogation is privacy, so you get a person alone in a room, away. Let's see. They instruct the police to display an air of confidence in the suspect's guilt and from outward appearance to maintain only an interest in confirming certain details. The guilt of the subject is to be posited as a fact. The interrogator should direct his comments toward the reasons why the subject committed the act, rather than the court's failure to be asking the subject whether he did it or not. Like other men, perhaps the subject has had a bad family life, an unhappy childhood, too much to drink, or an unrequited desire for women. The officers are instructed to minimize the moral seriousness of the offense, like act like it's not that big of a deal, to cast blame on the victim or on society. These texts are designed to put the subject in a psychological state where his story is but an elaboration of what the police purport to already know, that he is guilty. Explanations to the contrary are dismissed and discouraged. So if you tell them what they don't want to know, they just dismiss it. There's this whole Mutt and Jeff act that they do, like the good cop, bad cop thing. They want to interrogation may continue for days with required intervals of food and sleep, with no respite from the atmosphere of domination. And they get you like away from your family, any kind of moral support, get out of your house where you might feel comfortable knowing the laws and stuff, and put you in a room by yourself. And all this is like in the manual how they like abuse people with interrogations and stuff. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting to read. So the main things, let's see, the different kinds of videos I've been talking about. What would be the most? Let's just start with open carry, because people carry guns in public, and people from other countries probably don't get it while we have guns in the United States. Pretty much it's to prevent the government from being able to do whatever they want. It's not about protecting yourself from robbers or thieves or anything like that. But we're allowed to carry a gun openly in some states. You can't carry it concealed without a permit, which like a lot of these laws, like Terry v. Ohio, which relate to the stop and frisk law, were based on a case where police officers suspected some guys of some crimes, and he frisked them and he found concealed guns. So it's not about carrying open guns, and you can't assume that somebody has just because somebody has a gun openly carried that they're committing a crime or have reasonable suspicion of a crime. So you got Terry v. Ohio is about to stop and frisk, which basically what I just said. They can't just stop you for no reason. They can't take your gun without suspicion. Brown versus Texas, they can't demand to see your ID without reasonable suspicion. And again, having the gun by itself is not just cause by itself to suspect somebody of a crime. U.S. versus DeBerry says you can't be stopped over carrying a legal firearm. And Delaware versus Prowse says you cannot be detained without suspicion of criminal activity. So they can't just stop you illegally for no reason. They have to have a reason to stop you. And what was it? Florida? Nope, not that one. Maybe it's Katz versus U.S. that the expectation of privacy in regards to evidence. Like they were talking about, you can search somebody's trash cans because you don't have an expectation of privacy when you throw shit out of your trash. And police helicopters can fly over your house and search because you don't have an expectation of privacy on your roof. But where was I going with this? Police don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy when they're out in public, which says you can film them. And pretty much anybody else in public. That's why you have things like paparazzi that can film celebrities. And you can also film government buildings and jails to a certain extent. You can film the outside of a jail. You just can't go in and film like the private areas where the criminals would be expecting privacy or whatever. What was I talking about? Oh, it's Delaware versus Prowse that I was thinking of, which I thought that related to checkpoints. Like you can't have suspicionless checkpoints. I want to read you this real quick. This is from Delaware versus Prowse. Given the physical and psychological intrusion visited upon the occupants of a vehicle by a random stop to check documents, and they relate to U.S. v. Brignone Ponce, which is like a secondary case think related to it, in an automobile does not lose all reasonable expectation of privacy simply because the automobile and its use are subject to government regulation. So just because you have laws about your car doesn't mean you lose your privacy when you get in your car. People are not shorn of all Fourth Amendment protection, that's the search and seizure amendment, when they step from their homes onto the public sidewalk, nor are they shorn of those interests when they step from the sidewalks into their automobiles. So if you're in your car and you got the windows up, like, police stop you when you're in your car, they have to have a reason to be stopping you, or it's an illegal stop. They call it in the case law accosting someone when the police ask you questions. When they actually stop you, they call that seizing you. And when they search you or frisk you, that's called a search. So illegal searches and seizures is when they stop you for no reason and they search you without suspicion of a crime. I think there's something in Terry v. Ohio I wanted to read. Whenever a police officer accosts an individual and restrains his freedom to walk away, he has seized that person. Careful exploration of the outer surfaces of a person's clothing in an attempt to find weapons is a search. He may make a reasonable search for weapons of the person believed by him to be armed and dangerous, regardless of whether he has probable cause to arrest an individual for a crime or the absolute certainty that the individual is armed. Though the police must, whenever practicable, secure a warrant to make a search and seizure, that procedure cannot be followed where swift action based upon on-the-spot observation of the officer on the beat is required. So, if you see somebody with an open-carried gun, there's no swift action needed to take that gun from them. But if you see a concealed gun by accident, maybe that would be worth making swift action where you wouldn't need a warrant. And there's another thing, that when you get a warrant, it has to detail the place to be seized and what exactly you're going to take. So if you're going to search somebody's car for drugs, for example, and you don't know what the hell's in their car, I don't know if you're just allowed to say the car is the place and we're going to look for drugs, or if you have to say specifically what type of drug. It seems like you should already know what you're looking for, because that's what you get the warrant for. You should know that somebody has something illegal. That way you can articulate it in the warrant, like what you're looking for. But they don't do that. No, they don't do that. They're always looking for crimes, which is not really what the police do. They're supposed to execute the law or whatever, enforce the law. And they actually take it beyond that, and they stop people and try to find stuff because they're trying to make money. They're all like highway robbers now. They try to get you for just whatever kind of motor vehicle infraction they get you for. They try to find extra drug charges they can throw in. If they can, they'll plant drugs on you. I had a conversation with a guy on Facebook about this black guy that got stopped for no reason, and I was saying how you just never talk to the cops, because anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, but anything you say will not be used to help you at all. They don't use any of that. They just use what you say when they can against you. So just don't say anything. There's no reason to ever talk to a cop, especially if they're not making lawful stops. They're just stopping you for no reason. Anyway, I'll get to my point. I'm just trying to go over some of these laws so you know where I'm coming from. In Brown v. Texas, they had this cool conversation between the judge and the attorney, where he's saying, like, what do you think about if you stop a person lawfully and doesn't want to talk to you, you put him in jail for committing a crime? And he's talking about, the prosecutor says, I would question the defendant's statement in his motion that the First Amendment gives an individual the right to silence. See, it's not just the Fifth Amendment's right to remain silent. It's the First Amendment right to free speech, and silence is a part of free speech. So it's kind of the First and the Fifth Amendment. It means you don't have to say shit. I'm asking you, why should the state put you in jail because you don't want to say anything? And then he starts talking about how the governmental interest to maintain safety and security of society and whatever means that just asking for a person's name and address outweighs the individual's interests. And the judge says, why should it be a crime not to answer? And then he says it disrupts, tends to disrupt, and he says, what does it disrupt? To maintain security over citizens, to make sure they are secure in their gains in their homes. And the judge says, how does that secure anybody? By forcing them under penalty of being prosecuted to give their name and address even though they are lawfully stopped. And he just starts saying some stuff. It's presumed that the person, perhaps this individual, is up to something, and the officer is doing his duty to find out the individual's name and address and determine what's going on. The court's saying, I'm not questioning, I'm not asking whether the officer shouldn't ask questions. I'm sure they should ask everything they could possibly find out. What I'm asking is, what's the state's interest in putting a man in jail because he doesn't want to answer something? And he talks about the Miranda warning. A lot of defendants go ahead and confess, which is fine if they want to do that, but if they don't confess, you can't put them in jail, can you, for refusing to confess to a crime? So, basically he's saying here, in Brown v. Texas, that these checkpoints, for example, not really the, I guess sobriety checkpoints and the immigration checkpoints. And there's even like fruit Nazi checkpoints where you're not allowed to take certain kind of fruit or kind of wood over state lines because of pests or something. They make shit up so they can like try to find more stuff on you or plant drugs on you. And they try to get into your car and stuff and search you. They can ask all these questions, but you don't have to answer them. So there's a lot of these videos people go through checkpoints and the police will ask them questions and they just won't say anything. Except, am I free to leave? Until eventually they say, yeah, you're free to leave, and you don't have to answer shit. So, police can establish checkpoints, but you don't have to do anything about it. If you're ever stopped at a checkpoint, don't roll your window all the way down, because they try to smell shit, or they act like they smell marijuana or something, and then they can get all in your car, or they can say they have probable cause to run a dog around your car, and then they'll fake an alert from the dog, and then they'll get reasonable suspicion to search your car. And when they don't find anything, I think the officer should be charged, since they obviously made it up. But let's get around to killing cops, because I know that's what you're all interested in. In these first 4 amendments, the fourth, let's see here, no warrants shall be issued, unreasonable searches and seizures, the right of the people shall not be violated. Let's look at the way that's worded. Shall not be violated. The First Amendment is not that specific. The Fifth Amendment, no person shall be held. What does the Second Amendment say about the guns? Okay, well-regulated militia, blah, 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 right of the people to keep bear arms, shall not be infringed. Now, the way they're wording all these amendments, shall not, it seems to me that they're saying, under any circumstances, you shall not violate the Constitution of the United States. That is your permit to carry a gun, that is your permit to do all these things, and the police are basically supposed to fuck off. You can even retreat to your home and have even more safe haven from the police and the government. Governmental intrusion, as they like to put it. So let's say you're in a car and you got your windows rolled up. You can still hear the cop and they can hear you. And they ask all these questions. You tell them you don't want to answer them. You don't have to give them your ID and whatever else. If you're stopped with a gun, you don't have to like give them your ID just because you have a gun. And the police want to do something crazy, like pull a gun on you or like break into your car window, which I've seen in several videos. And they want to illegally search and seize you and all this stuff. Under any circumstances, you're not allowed to do that. So in my argument that I would make, that you're allowed to shoot and kill that cop in that instance. Because the cop also has a gun, and the common denominator here is you need to rise to the level of violence that they're capable of because they have a gun. And a lot of videos, and just like Ferguson, whatever, Michael Brown, a lot of these places, all over the country now, cops are shooting people to death for no reason. So it's not unreasonable to think that a cop would shoot you for trying to resist arrest, especially an illegal arrest or an illegal stop, or infringing on your rights. So it makes complete sense to defend your constitutional rights with lethal violence if the police officer has a gun. Now, if this was England, where the police don't have guns, I would completely be against it because police don't have any lethal violence except like a stick. You should be allowed to beat the cop with a stick, maybe to death, I don't know. Probably just enough so you could stop them from infringing on your rights. But since we have the Second Amendment over here, and the cops have the guns, cops have no expectation of safety, and officer safety doesn't apply. If they don't like being a cop, they should get another job if they want to be safe all the time. Especially if they're going to illegally infringe upon your rights that they have sworn an oath to uphold, and the Constitution is saying it shall not be infringed under any circumstances. I say it's completely justified in killing a cop in that situation. I would even question as to whether they're a real cop, especially a lot of these videos. Police will not identify themselves, even though they're required to by their policy. So if they don't identify themselves, you don't even know you're talking to a cop. You could be talking to a guy that stole a police uniform, stole a police car. You have no idea until they identify themselves. A lot of these videos, it's even crazier, like plainclothes guys or like governmental agents come up and they start acting like the police, and they're just a guy in a t-shirt. why should you take them seriously? But for all you know, they're carrying a concealed weapon and they could use it against you. And they try to get you to stop filming shit, or they try to, like, give you a hassle over carrying a gun. Fuck that shit. If they do anything, like, untowards, like, if they're just asking you questions, you don't have a right to take out your gun and shoot them, obviously. But if they're trying to, like, illegally arrest you, which is going to end up locking you in a cage, then I'd say you're probably justified. Just like you're justified in defending yourself if somebody attacked you. It's just as much of an attack to lock you in a cage as it is to, like, punch you in the face. So, defending your rights, obviously, to me, it seems safe to use lethal force. But see, I'm a gun owner, a gun carrier. I don't carry my gun, but I own a gun. And if somebody's breaking into my house, that's like going against my right to or stand your ground laws and stuff. If somebody were to like assault my house, then obviously I would reach for my gun. But I would never think to use my gun to violate somebody else's rights, like somebody's free speech rights. Let's take the Westboro Baptist Church, for example. They picket people's funerals, soldiers' funerals that are gun carriers most likely, and they say the weirdest, craziest shit about gays and like insult people in their worst moments at a funeral. And people don't pull out their guns and violate their First Amendment rights over it. I don't think. I've never heard of any Westboro Baptist Church people being shot or like held at gunpoint. But the police, they don't give a shit. They'll violate your First Amendment's first thing with their guns. So in that case, it's foreign to me to like violate somebody else's rights with a gun. But defending your rights with a gun is completely fine. So just think how sick of an individual a cop has to be to have this kind of power over somebody, to use a gun, not to defend their rights, but they're trying to just get money out of you. They're trying to put more people in jail because of the prison industrial complex. And they're trying to like get more drug arrests or more traffic tickets or whatever. You're just trying to find illegal aliens. None of this is worth having a gun pulled on somebody. And I think it's safe to say it's you should meet that same level of force. And if I was on any kind of jury where somebody killed a cop, I would never convict that person, just because that's how all cops are. So I don't know. What do you guys think about this? It probably sounded pretty crazy at the beginning, but then I brought up the British officers that don't have guns, and then the Westboro Baptist Church example. And I think I pretty much cinched it right there with my analogies. And if anybody knows which legal precedent is the one that says you can film people out in public, let me know. I've seen a lot of stuff about the expectation of privacy, but I can't really find the exact case I'm looking for. Oh, let me read you this real quick. This is the oh, yeah. This is from DeBerry v. U.S. This officer was hailing a guy to stop, and the guy didn't stop, I think, or something like that. And it says, the reason for this rule, if it can be called a reason, is that the mere accosting of a person is not a search or seizure of him. That's asking questions means it's legal to do, as long as you don't stop him. And so is not within the amendment's scope. This seems a little feeble, since very few people think themselves free not to stop if a policeman accosts them. But the law is well established that if the officer asks rather than commands, the person accosted is not seized, and so the protections of the Fourth Amendment do not attach. So if a cop comes up to you and he says, this is the way cops talk. They don't anymore, I guess, since this thing. They used to just say, stop or I'll shoot, and all this kind of stuff. They used to give commands. Now, they use all this roundabout language, like, I'm going to have to ask you to step out of the vehicle, that kind of thing. Whenever you hear an officer say, I'm going to have to ask you, or I'm asking you for your ID, I'm going to have to ask you to step out of your vehicle, anytime they say ask, just say, no, I don't want to do it. I don't have to. And they can't do shit about it. You don't even have to stop or do anything else. You don't have to listen to them. They're not stopping you because you're not being detained, you're not being seized. And they can't detain you unless they have suspicion of a crime. They have to be able to articulate one. But, I wanted to read you the definition of murder. Which let's see. This definition says the unlawful killing of another human being without justification or excuse. There is this old common law thing, which is from England, with about malice of forethought. Okay. This definition here says the killing of a human being by a sane person with intent, malice of forethought, prior intention to kill the particular victim or anyone who gets in the way, and with no legal excuse or authority. Now it says, with intent and malice, and with no legal excuse or authority. So you have to have both of those. You can't just have the intent. You also have to have the legal excuse, or have no legal excuse or authority. So, like I'm saying, if a cop does something to violate your rights, and then he breaks into your window or pulls a gun on you, then you do have legal excuse. So it's not murder. So you can't be convicted for first or second degree murder. Killing is not illegal. There are plenty of ways in which killing someone is legally justified, just as this guy down in Ferguson that killed Mike Brown. He didn't even have to go to court. It's legal to kill people. It's illegal to murder someone. And you have to have no legal excuse in order to call it murder. There's other things that are involved, like torturing, moving the body, or moving the person before you kill them. And then it says the death of a police officer or prison guard, or it was as an incident to another crime, as during a holdup or rape. But see, that doesn't account for the no legal excuse or authority part, because you have to have that for it to be murder. I'm not saying this will hold up in court. I'm just saying this is what the legal definition is. So it should. So try it. I'm not saying try it, but this has been T2. This has been a long video. Jeez.